find a room. Namaste, Sankrantji. So
Namaste,
I will
namaste.
introduce you a little bit. I have known you as from the Art of Living world as a teacher, but you're also a serial entrepreneur. And, you have done so much work on the Hindu Charter. And just, I follow your writings, I follow your Twitter handle, and just some of the important work that you've done in the framework of the analyzing the Indian state, and as a police state, as just the Constitution of India. I think without taking any more time, I want to talk about the topic. If you may just, I think I got lost. The topic is about some new work that you're doing.
Yeah, it's on the Freedom of Religion Act. I don't think it's new. I have spoken about it before also, but I think it needs a wider dissemination and a wider audience. I do apologize. The lighting is not the best. I'm actually in a lounge in Charlotte Airport, coming from a 1-week yoga teacher training refresher. So I'm in an airport, but I'm very fresh, very happy to talk to everybody. And if Richa, can I share some slides? I do have some quick slides that
yes,
might be actually helpful. Once.
So,
I think I have permission, so I'll go ahead and do that then. So right. The main, yes.
And I will, yeah, perfect.
So I'm going to, some people may have read my article, which is called Conversion War and Religious Freedom. One of the problems that we have had in articulating our position is that to an international audience or even to Indians, is that we have looked at the both sides. Let us say there is some missionaries who are coming to convert, and there is some native traditions, indigenous traditions, others that are following their own practice. We have looked at these as symmetrical things. So people say it's freedom of religion because anybody can convert anybody. But the first and most fundamental thing to realize is that this is not a symmetrical situation. It is an asymmetrical war. So we have to see that as an asymmetrical war, and only then can we craft the right remedy for it. Almost all of the so-called anti-conversion bills in India are a complete and utter failure. And they will be a complete and utter failure because we are following actually a Protestant template for what it means, what should be made illegal. For instance, we are saying, oh, conversion by allurement needs to be made illegal. What that means is there has to be a conversion based on true conviction. Well, this is exactly what the Christians would also say, that the conversion must be based on true conviction. So, of course, there are missionary armies and their quotas and all of that. But what I'm saying is, if you look at from a theological point of view, there doesn't seem to be any theological disagreement. The Christians would also say yes. So this notion of not by coercion or fraud or allurement and all that is simply echoing some of the Protestant Christian ideas themselves. So and all of the conversion acts, actually, hardly anybody is ever persecuted under them, and they haven't managed to do anything. So we have to understand the background here to see what would be the right remedy. If we don't understand the problem, we can't craft the solution. So first thing we have to see is what is religious freedom and who defines this. Right now, the way religious freedom is defined, either even in the UN or in the Indian Constitution, is defined according to the Abrahamic template of religion. It's defined according to the proselytizing religion that see religion as a competitive endeavor. So the freedom of religion means that you create a free market of religion. Anybody can convert anybody, anybody can change anybody. And this is why the right to propagate is part of the Indian Constitution. It is following the Abrahamic template of what religion is. The native traditions all across the world have actually seen this freedom very differently. They have said the freedom is to pass on our tradition, the tradition of one's ancestors, to one's children without interference. That is freedom, when we are not interfered in either by the state or by powerful forces that come and want to force us into one thing or another thing. That is what is freedom for us. And there's always a power differential that happens whenever these indigenous traditions were converted. They were always converted via power differential. So we have to understand this. Um, and I'll give you just one quote here. There's a longer presentation I had made on the same topic. If you look on YouTube, you'll find it, but I'll keep it short for this purposes. So one of the quotes is from the Pueblo Indians, who are saying we have met because our most fundamental right of religious liberty, this is what religious freedom means to them, to pass this religion with hidden sacred knowledge and its many forms of prayer on to our children is our supreme duty to our ancestors. This is how pretty much all of the native traditions saw what freedom meant. You know, if when you go to the Nagas who were converted en masse through the Baptist, but also through the consent of the Indian state, which was completely unable and unwilling to protect the tribals who were being attacked, to protect that they may pass on the sacred knowledge that they had gotten from their ancestors onto their children. So the Nag, so we have to understand three asymmetries here. If you look at the other side, the International Mission Board, that says, declare his God's glory among the heathen, his wonders among all people. God wants Southern Baptists as a people to mobilize vast resources for reaching all people groups for Jesus Christ. So the point of view of religion, of Abrahamic religion, of Christo-Islam in particular, is that it is our God-ordained duty to convert other people, to reach all people groups for Jesus Christ, to get people to follow Allah, right? This is considered a religious duty for them. So we cannot force them for following what they consider their religious duty. What we have to do is we have to understand what is the asymmetry involved. So, and you know, this goes on God, this is not our mission, it is God's mission, they say, because as Jesus said, the gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a witness to every nation, and then the end will come. So this is apocalyptic. This is for the end times. This is for the redemption of all these people who are lying, rotting in graves, waiting for the second coming, so they will all ascend to heaven, right? So this is very important for them, that they preach it to the whole world, and therefore they get into heaven. So this is the asymmetry, and people know about the Joshua Project. They can go look at that. This is from, again, the Baptists that they're quoting. We see they're targeting every single group in India is targeted, from small group with hundreds of people to millions of people. All the different jatis and the tribes and all of those people are targeted. And what again, they're saying the Sonar people, when they embrace the gospel of Jesus Christ, we will see the collapse of Hinduism. So one side wants to see the collapse. This is the asymmetry of doctrine. Hindus are not going around saying we have to convert the entire world, therefore we have to strategize for how we make Christianity collapse. Right? This would be absurd. The Nagas did not send missionaries to the US, but the US Baptists send missionaries to the Nagas. Why is this? Why did the Nagas not send missionary to the US? Because they don't see that as their purpose. They don't see that as their doctrine. They're saying our freedom means to pass what we have gotten to our children from our ancestors. So unless we understand this, it's going to be very difficult to. We really need to start questioning the templates that we are passing, not just fiddling about. It's like so many so-called Hindu groups fiddle about how do we define minority? No, this whole template of majority minority is absurd for India. We have to throw the whole thing out. We can't keep nitpicking on how do you define minority. You define minority in a state like this. Defining the very fact of that you say there is a majority, you are taking a template of congregational religion, of a church, of a centralized church, that had a common structure that could impose its will upon a minority. That doesn't have happen in India. So the entire thing has to be thrown out lock, stock, and barrel. Similarly, when we are talking about the human rights regime and freedom of religion, we have to question the very fundamentals, the foundation on which it rests. For instance, the African scholar Makau Mutua says the human rights regime incorrectly assumes a level playing field, which requires that African religions compete in the marketplace of ideas. The rights corpus not only forcibly imposes on African religions the obligation to compete, a task for which is non-proselytizing, non-competitive creeds. They are not historically fashioned. This is very important. When you create a marketplace of competitive marketplace, you have assumed that religion is a competitive endeavor. But for the native indigenous traditions, religion, there is no such idea of religion, and there's no such thing of a competition between religion. What they're saying is, how can, it's as absurd saying, I want to convert you to my religion as to say, I want you to convert you to my ancestors. You have your ancestors and your tradition. I have my ancestors and my tradition. So we're completely different. Tradition is not religion. Trying to map tradition to religion is where this problem happens. So um, we have to look at, it seems inconceivable that the human rights regime, as it is currently constituted, would have intended to protect the right of certain religions to destroy others. So what happens, let's say a tribe in Africa says, no, we won't allow missionaries. The entire international apparatus will descend on them. They will say, no, you are stopping freedom of religion if you stop missionaries from coming to your country. The United States will say this is a cause of concern of religious freedom. Everybody will say this is a problem for religious freedom. But that tribe is simply trying to protect its traditional customs, and they should have the right to do so, right? So we really need, just like you have diversity of other kinds, we need to articulate this in the sense of preserving the diversity of various different traditions without having monopolistic religions that have a clearly stated aim of being global monopolies, a God-ordained aim of being global monopolies to go and destroy all the other ones. So, and of course, there's a big asymmetry of resources. I won't spend a lot of time on this. Some of this is well known. You know, we are talking about, can any small indigenous group in India compete with these resources? You know, even so, let alone small groups, even Hindus there's so many diverse communities and traditions and everything that got lumped under Hinduism. How do you expect to compete with a very structured war? It is a war where on one side, the resources are mobilized, billions and billions of dollars, their armies, their missionary armies, their paid sales force, they have quotas, they have mapped out what they consider as the enemy, they've marked their territories, they've distributed it, right? So on one side, this is happening. And on the other side, we don't even know that there is a war happening, or we want to pretend there is no war. We say, oh, it's all the same, everybody is the same, how does it matter? You know, so it's weird. It's like blind people with blindfolds who are sitting targets, and they're getting shot, and they're saying everything is okay, everything is the same, right? So it's not going to work like that. So you cannot actually say no to missionary activity because that's considered inconsistent with international standards. You know, Sri Lanka tried to pass a law to forbid missionaries, and then, you know, again the power structures of the world. People say, oh, US is secular, this, that, and the other. Well, try to do something against missionary activity and see how quickly the US state descends, whether it's Democrat or Republican, it doesn't matter, right? And all the human rights regime will descend also, right? The other one to look at is Project Thessalonica. I've written it in detail. Again, they have mapped it out like a war. They are going through all the target groups. They're looking at the weak points. They're saying, how do we attack? They fund women's rights group. They fund animal rights group. One of the big attacks is they want to attack popular festivals throughout India and popular pilgrimage places, popular festivals, because this is how in our tradition, a lot of what passes from generation to generation, happens through festivals, happens through all these kinds of things. The children enjoy Diwali, they enjoy the firecrackers, they enjoy something else. So you attack these festivals, you attack Sabarimala. The main reason to attack it is, and I have written extensively on you, you can look and find my article. Ranjana Kumari runs a women's rights NGO, big NGO that was speaking for Sabarimala. And it was all funded by the church groups. Why would church care whether you pray to Satan in one way or another way? Because Hindus are all satanic anyways, according to the church. Why would they care if women get to pray to Satan? Why? Because they know that if that happens, it breaks the faith of the common people. This is the reason. It breaks the faith in the energy of the temple. So this is how these targets are chosen, and that is why those are attacked. So we have to understand. So the Freedom of Religion Act must be structured in a way, and I have a full draft on my website sankrant.org, that prohibit. You have to look at how, just like they have mapped our terrain, we have to look at what is the real challenge. The real challenge is, as soon as you say you shall not an individual person will not convert due to somebody giving them money, you get into a very difficult problem. Like, who's going to report this? If somebody's coming me and giving me money, I'm happy to take the money and convert. Like, you're never going to stop it that way by saying, no, 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 you shouldn't be taking money to convert, right? What you need to do is, you need to say, you shall not have an army. Religion is not a competitive endeavor. No person shall form and operate an organization with religious conversion as its aim, right? So there are actually missionary colleges in India that are teaching strategies for conversion. We can make those illegal. You actually have people that are a sales force. They have a quota. It's like a multinational corporation given sales force on quota, and they get incentives per person that they convert, right? This is happening both in the Islamic case and the Christian case. That can be made illegal, saying we believe in plurality of religion. In our system, having a sales force that is converting other people should be made illegal. So look at the structures that actually we need to change, not make allurement illegal or something. Never going to happen, never worked, right? Secondly, no direct or indirect compensation, not to the person who's being converted, but to the converter. So no person shall receive any monetary benefit such as to convert or attempt to convert others. You have to dismantle the sales force, because that is very trackable. You can check, is this person getting money for conversion, right? Converting other people. That is very easy to track and make illegal, right? Because and it's a very valid reason from a human rights perspective. We're saying, fine, anybody, there's lots of information available on the internet. If somebody wants to be a Christian, we are not trying to stop anybody's individual liberty. People can discover whatever path they want, follow it, no problem. But you cannot have an imperialistic strategy of saying you have a sales force and quotas and then you go and convert other people. That is what we need to target. No solicitation of minors. This is super important. These religions, proselytizing religions, rely on indoctrination. It's very important, because absurdities can only be believed if they are taught from childhood and repeated incessantly, Friday and Sunday, right? So they want to catch the children young to convert them. There is so much of this going on in India. Why should, if you say that somebody needs to give informed consent for sexual activity, for instance, a minor is not mature enough. How are they mature enough to agree to convert? That's like changing your, have a much, that's also a very significant impingement on a person, saying you're completely changing your tradition, right? So there has to be informed consent, and we say minors are not capable of informed consent for conversion, and therefore there should be no solicitation of any kind to minors. So this is very important. And again, we have to word it in the sense that passing on of traditions from one generation to the next is a fundamental right. This is what they did in the Americas, in Australia, everywhere. They would take the children and they would remove them from the parents, force them into boarding schools, Christian boarding schools, where their tradition would be beaten out of them. They would be fined for speaking their own language. course, the tragedy of India is that we ourselves are sending our children to these boarding schools where language gets beaten out of them. So that tragedy is a different problem. I talk in my book, The English Medium Myth. But this one, we should say fundamental right to pass on a tradition from one generation to the next without interference. This is what needs to be made a fundamental right of religious freedom, the freedom to pass on the traditions. Um, Again, no unsolicited marketing for religious conversion. There should be no proselytizing in a public place. We are advertising, whether institutional or one-on-one marketing. The right to propagate is intended for individuals to share their faith with people they know and to express interest. So, anybody who's interested in any of these religions, as I said, go find them on the internet, convert, no problem. We should not have any act that denies anybody the freedom to practice or follow the path of their choosing. This is very Indic. In the Indic tradition, one can follow whatever path one wants. But having a incentivized sales force with public, proselytization and a huge marketing machinery is not very Indic. So this is what we need to curb. Again, this is very important, that the right to practice their tradition and to continue their tradition is enshrined, right? Which is that the state also does not have the right to go in and say, I am the civilizer and I am going to tell you that you cannot practice this tradition, right? The state should follow the bar of rarest of rare. How many people are getting killed because, X person is not being allowed in Sabarimala? It should be the rarest of rare case when the state comes in and decides to interfere in a traditional practice. And this again needs to be enshrined by law. Nationalization of religious institutions. Again, no religious institution in India that owns real property shall have a subsidiary relationship, either formal, informal, ecclesiastical, with a foreign religious entity. So a foreign citizen, even an NRI, cannot own land in India, let's say agricultural land or rural land. But a church which completely reports to a foreign entity has the full right to own this land. So this is, if you think about it, it's completely absurd, and it's able to buy large tracts of land and control large tracts of land like that. Again, full text of the Freedom of Religion Act is at sankrant.org. You can go and check. You just go to sankrant.org and look for a draft, or just look for Freedom of Religion with my name. You'll find it. And if there are any questions, I can take that. I don't know if you have questions, reach out how this format works. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? I think I was muted probably. So I think I have a question. I'm going to just end my phone. Yeah. So one of the questions I had was, these are good points, and, thank you for putting this together. I will review it even more. And I think this is a very important point for this, for this conference that we are having, because this is at the root of, the wiping out of the indigenous traditions in our society across the world, not just
across
in India,
the world. Yeah.
across the world. So, and in the UN Charter, what I understood is that there is no provision for the, I'm going to stop the screen sharing. That was one of the things so that we can sort of be.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can do it. I know how.
Let me just do it once.
So it just becomes, a little, I can see the hands raised or anything. No one has raised their hand, but if you have. So one of the, I just tried to open that page. So it does not include, when in the Genocide Convention, it does not include political groups or so-called cultural genocide. So that is my understanding, that they actually got the church and, the other, parties with a lot of clout were able to take that aspect out of the UN Charter itself. So that is why, I think it is a plan, of course, planned a sort of operation to not count cultural genocide as.
And yes, and also even more than cultural, why does nobody speak of religious diversity? That it's important to preserve religious diversity, right? they will attack India for so-called minority rights, which is a complete sham. But we need to start creating different terminology. We need religious diversity in the world, and we need the freedom for people to pass on their traditions to their children without interference. That is what freedom of religion means to us. So this is the, once we start articulating it in our language, they will have no response, because the whole structure right now is created by their framework.
Yes.
And we have to start creating the argument based on our framework, which which we have not done. We keep trying to respond in their framework, and we keep failing.
But that is why we are attacked. Like, I think some of the things that the Modi government did for the FCRA regulations, which are of course hurting everybody, not just the proselytizing faiths, but some of those things, and clamping down on some of the NGOs which were indulging in these kind of activities. I think in Gujarat we also had some other frameworks where they were, sort of countering those. So that is where a lot of
but they're half-hearted efforts. I mean, the FCRA, the NGO stuff they've done has almost had no impact in terms of in fact, Surendra had done a lot of work for that on the Hindu Charter, and it has almost had no impact on proselytizing funding, or practically zero. So what we need to do is, we had gone in the Hindu Charter, we'd suggested to have a blanket ban on all FCRA funding. If you want to send somebody funds, give it to a Government of India fund, and they will disperse it. If you want to help India, but we can just completely break this foreign connection of money flowing in, or individuals who are NRIs or OCIs, they can give money in their personal capacity to an organization of choosing, but no institutional fund transfer from institutions outside to institutions inside, because this is one of the biggest forms of imperialism today, is imperialism and control via the end.
Yes. So no, there's I guess a very complex topic, but thank you for putting it together in such a short time frame. I think we do have another session, Sankrantji, but I like, without this session, I think this conference would not have been complete. So thank you for taking the time, and I would like to invite you for my webinar sometime to discuss this in a lot more detail, maybe.
Sure, would love to do that.
Thank you, and you have a good
Namaste.
fight, and namaste.